Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome. This is the Breaking Free Show, and my name is Meryl and Shannon, and I am so excited to be here with you today. Every week I tell you I have a special guest, but today I have a very special guest. And so just give me a minute before I introduce her. I just want to say hi to Amnon.
Hello. Hello, Marilyn. How are you?
I'm good. And
Happy
you?
Hanukkah.
Happy Hanukkah to you too.
Happy Hanukkah.
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 Yes. Both Amnon and I celebrate Hanukkah,
Yeah.
and it's a very special time of being in the light. And I want to compliment our rabbi. He wrote a beautiful article the other day, and it's in the News and Observer. His name is Eric Solomon. It's also on my Facebook page. It's beautiful. It's about, I don't know if any of you know about Hanukkah, and the menorah has 8 candles that you light, and each for every day of Hanukkah, and then there's one candle that represents the shamus, which lights all the candles. And the rabbi put it this way: the shamus was a helper and helps light the other candles. And he referred to all the people in the world that help each other are a shamus, and they bring light to everyone else. And so we all should be light and light the way for other people. And it was just a beautiful article. I can't say it as well as he wrote it, but I would love for everyone to read it. It was great, and share it with the world because we are each other's helper. With that, I have my guest today, and you'll probably see a tear or two because this is the first time, other than having my mother on, that I've had a relative, a family member. And I've been wanting my cousin Meryl to come on the show for years because I heard a little bit of her story here and there throughout these last few years. And she has done some traveling and she's had some experiences. And I know that her life and her journey has impacted me. And I know that it will impact you. But before I bring her on, I just want to remind you all that you are more than welcome anytime during the show. It's an open invitation to call in and chat anytime you like, to comment, ask a question. You can call in at 919-518-9773, or you can come in our chat, which is you can come in. You don't have to put your real name. You can put your nickname and ask questions and comment in there as well. And you can come in on Skype, which is going to come in on voice, not video, at computers, that's plural, then the number 2K voice. And we would love to invite you in anytime you want. This is an open invitation. Just sit back and chat with us, listen, have fun, and enjoy the show. So, Meryl. Hey, Meryl.
It's great to be here.
It's good to have you, honey. I miss you.
I miss you so much.
So let me just tell you who Meryl is, and then I'll let her tell you who she really is. This is who she is to me. Okay, so Meryl's dad, and here I go. Meryl's dad is my first cousin, my cousin Lenny, and his mother and my dad were brother and sister. So Lenny's my first cousin, and Meryl is my second cousin. And I'm fortunate to have relationships with my cousins. And some of them I don't see, but I carry them in my heart. And Meryl and I have, we communicate on Facebook and all that kind of stuff. So here's the tears rolling down. So anyway, I love her and I love her father, and they always meant a lot to me through my life. And I'm happy to have her on the show.
We love you right back.
Thank you. So tell everyone a little bit about you.
So I'm a mom to 2 grown, fabulous kids. Very close with both of them. About 5 years ago, when my daughter was in college in San Francisco, and my life had become a little boring, I guess, to me, and I was looking for something different. I decided to travel. I decided to pack it all up and put my life in storage and travel the world and see things I hadn't seen and had wanted to see, and do a solo trip where I didn't have to answer to anyone. Very selfish, I know. And
Whoa. Why is that selfish?
Oh, it's selfish in a good way. It's actually, um, it feels selfish because it's not typical to travel alone. For me, it wasn't typical to travel alone, and I found myself being able to wake up, go to sleep, eat, anything I wanted to do. Go see that museum, don't go see that museum, skip that tourist destination, because it was everything about what I wanted. And there was no collaborating or meeting halfway for anything. So it felt selfish
I can see.
in a way.
So in a way, being the number one focal
I was
point
right.
can maybe seem selfish, but I personally wouldn't call it selfish, but
Okay.
yeah, but
I guess selfish feels negative when you say it.
yeah, I don't think what you did was negative.
No, no, no. I don't mean it that way.
Yeah.
But it was different to travel alone.
So you packed up you sold you sold your car, I mean, you got rid of a lot of things. You just
I had sold my house prior, and I had moved into a little cottage rental, and continued my business there. And as I realized that I just was so burnt out and feeling stale, not really wanting to put roots down anywhere after having sold my house, I had an opportunity to go. So I literally packed up everything and I didn't know where I would land. I gave myself a year to travel. So I literally put everything in storage, and I did sell my car. And I gave all my important documents to my best friend, Lori. And she was my gatekeeper, if you will. She had the key to my storage unit, as did my kids. And yeah, I just kind of did all my research and got very excited, and made a little bit of an itinerary, not everything planned. And that was, and I set out. I will get into that, but just an overview is that my daughter being in California, when I did decide to return to the States, I chose to go to San Francisco because that's where she was living. And I am recently back 8 months ago, back in New Jersey, back home. So that's the general overview.
So how long did it take you to do the research first of all, to plan to go?
I think, well, let's see. I left the day after Thanksgiving 5 years ago, and I probably started researching in June. So maybe 5 months of research.
And when you were researching, what was the impetus behind the research? I mean, what were you looking for in the research?
I think I was looking for some type of order. Where did I want to go? How did I want to travel? What would it cost me? Where I can be comfortable with myself, in what situations. I knew that I wanted to go to places that were very far to me, that I hadn't had an opportunity to go. And when I'm divorced. When I was married, we really didn't travel, and I always wanted to. So this was my opportunity to say, okay, you're living for the now. Where do you want to go? Africa. Wow. Yeah, I want to go to Africa. I want to go to the continent of Africa. Okay, where do you want to go in Africa? So, I had to do all that research. When I started planning the trip, my old college roommate was supposed to go with me, and she wanted to go to Australia. I had no interest in Australia for some reason, but we put it on the list. After about a month or two, she decided she couldn't go, and I decided to continue and go forward. So I kept Australia on the list. And then I had to know, well, where might I want to go in Australia? Where in, Asia might I want to go? I didn't have to plan everything. I really actually didn't want to plan most of it, because as you travel, you talk to people and you meet people, and they will tell you, where they've been and what's fabulous and what you shouldn't miss and what you can skip. So what I did is I planned my very first location, which would be South Africa, which I'm a huge Dave Matthews fan. And he was doing his very first concert in South Africa at that time. He was born in South Africa, but had never played there. So that was very special to me to hit that city, Cape Town, when he was there and start off my trip that way. So that's what I did.
Wow.
I also knew I wanted to go on a safari. So I researched companies and locations, and then I set that up. You have to plan that. You can't really wing that, because you need reservations, and you need all kinds of medical shots and clearances and things
So
like
let me
that.
ask you something before you go on. I want to just back up a second because there's a lot to the story. But prior to making the decision to go,
Mm-hmm.
and you feeling stifled, and I'm sure that there are a lot of people who are listening who feel stifled at various times in their life, and they choose to do this, they choose to do that. We have breakthroughs, we feel stale, we feel
Yep.
stuck, all kinds of things. Had you
Mm-hmm.
tried other things or did other things
Mm-hmm.
first? Oh,
I
was this
did.
okay? Like,
I
what
did.
did you do? And then how did you come to the realization that traveling for a year was going to unstuck you?
I think that it's probably easier to know what you don't like than what you do like, or what you don't want than what you do want. And so so I'm an interior designer and a residential designer, and I've had my own company for, well, now it's 25 years. So it was about 19 years when I actually left. And I decided that I was really feeling very stale. So what could I do to change it up? So having had my own company for so long, I was feeling lonely. And I had wonderful people that worked with me, usually just two, for a number of years. That we were down to two, and then just one. And I felt like I wanted a bigger, collaborative environment. So I actually went and spoke with Restoration Hardware. I thought maybe on the side, I'd like to really get out and meet more people and work in a corporate environment. I had worked in a corporate environment in my, I'd like to say, past life, because that I was a tax accountant before I was an interior designer. So I had that, but I was in my 20s, and I was, it was a different time, different experience. So I did try to look into different opportunities for myself like that, but none of them felt that they would relieve me of the staleness. It wasn't what I wanted. I would say, all right, I've kind of explored that, but I don't want that. I know I don't want that. So,
Because it's a
yep.
big chunk to say, to go about your life and then say, you know what, I'm gonna kind of, get rid of this, get rid of that. I'm gonna travel for a
I
year.
think I honestly was more afraid to do nothing and to look at my life and look back and say, who was I? What did I do? Was that enough of a life? And I guess, I always think, like, you have one life. You have one life, and I can watch other people's lives and see what they look like. But I'm in charge of my life, and I'm the only one that can make my life whatever I want it to be. I don't mean I can, have all the money in the world to, that kind of thing. But there are so many choices that we can make. People feel stuck, and they're like, well, I can't go. Well, if you really wanted to go, you really could go. You have to want it more, to make it happen.
Did you have this concept prior to going, or is this something that you gained while you were gone?
No, I had it prior to going.
Okay.
Yeah. I
Okay.
knew I wanted more to my life than what my work was giving me at the moment. And, just the day to day, same restaurants, same bars, same, I was like, this is just not interesting to me.
Well,
So,
and you were in a position where, your children were grown,
right,
single at the time and ready to go. And so
right.
prior to going, what did your family think?
Um, I think they were afraid from my kids were all in. My kids thought it was fabulous, but I've brought them up that way. I've always pushed them to go and to have experiences and to, see places and learn. My mother was very afraid, did not want me anywhere near Africa, as a matter of fact, because that bombing in the mall in where was it? Nairobi, or I forget exactly where it was, but she said, you can't go to Africa. And I said, well, Mom, Africa's a continent. And, we had the school shooting already in our cute little town here in Connecticut. It can happen anywhere. So I tried to just say, I'm not going to let that kind of thing scare me. I mean, I've grown up in New York. You know what that is. So I feel I'm very aware. And I'm going to trust myself, and I'm going to be safe, and I'm going to go. I didn't have any fear. I just really had excitement.
Really?
People ask me if I had fear, and that was not a word that came to mind when I thought about what was ahead of me.
Wow.
It was really excitement.
That's
Yeah.
extraordinary, really.
I don't know. I just,
I mean, not to have fear and that's just, it's extraordinary. That's why I respect you
if
so
you did,
much.
there's a saying, everyone's heard it, but if you didn't have fear, what would you do, right? And fear holds you back from so much. So if you could take your fear and put it in a little box and put it to the side and just keep it there, you would agree probably that you would do a lot of things differently.
Well, that's why I wanted you on the show. That's why the show is called Breaking Free, so that I, have invited guests all along the way in the last, I think, 7 years that have, chipped away at freedom in their life in one way, shape, or form, whether it was a tool, a strategy, a technique, a philosophy, a trip, or something
Right.
that, opens up for more freedom for, for themselves,
Right.
and you've done it. So before we go on, I just want to remind everyone to please feel free to call in. Have you had an experience? Please share 919-518-9773 or computers, that's plural, the number 2K voice, and then you can come in on our chat. Okay, so you went to the concert, right?
So I went to the concert. I already learned how lovely South Africans are, and how respectful of your space they are. It was just, there's so many things you wouldn't know unless you were like in that situation. So I love music. I love live concerts. I go often. I just saw Dave Matthews like 3 nights ago in the city at Madison Square Garden. And when you're in the United States, anywhere, if you're at a concert venue and you're on the floor, you will move up and squish in. And you basically don't have to stand on your own 2 feet, right? You're just as close as you can get to that stage. That's what you do. And I found at this concert, there must have been 2 feet of space around every person. And I couldn't understand what was going on here. And I could just meander my way right to that stage and put my hand on the stage, and no one said anything. They're just respectful of space there. They're just very kind and lovely, lovely people. So yeah, so that was fun. Everything was a new experience. I was there when Mandela died, which was really quite a time to be there.
But that was impactful.
Very impactful. And I had just traveled to see the island, Robben Island, where he was kept for 18 years. So it was all very, very special to be there, very sad time to be there. The money that I had changed when he died, the money changed. So everyone said, hold on to your money, because that's something, it's like a keepsake now, because it won't have his picture on it anymore. So yeah, And you know that I had a very interesting story happen to me when I was there.
When
I know
soon,
I'm
yeah.
bringing this up.
But that
Uh,
that and this next story happened how soon after you got in on your trip?
it was my it was my well, it was my first day there, my second day there. The first night I flew in, I had to stay in a hotel, but I had reserved an Airbnb with a lovely couple who owned this really pretty property, this house, and it was available the day after I got there, which was also the day of the concert. So when I went there to meet the owner and let him show me around and just meet me, give me the key, that kind of thing, they had a housekeeper there when we went inside, and he introduced me to the housekeeper. I said hello. I put my bags down and went on, the little 5-minute tour with him, and then he left. I had my tickets to go to Robben Island, and I had to leave within 15 minutes of that time. So I just started unpacking a little bit of stuff and realized that, I had to call a cab and get out of there. So that's what I did, and I got into the cab, and the cab driver pulled away, and he said, "Do you have tickets to Robben Island?" And I said, "Oh my goodness, I left them. I left them back. We just need to turn around really quick. We were, 2 minutes away." So we did that, and I ran back upstairs and ran into the bedroom there where I would have left my tickets in my bag because I hadn't unpacked them yet. As I walked in, I noticed that the housekeeper was in there and she ran into the bathroom. Um, and I looked at my bag and I realized that bags that I hadn't unpacked yet were unpacked, and my things were all over the floor in a circle, around my bag. So, it takes a moment to realize what's going on here. And I immediately, called her name, and she came out of the bathroom, and I said, "What's going on?" And she said, "I didn't do anything." And I said, "I didn't unpack this." And she said, "I didn't take anything." And I said, "Where's my cash?" And she didn't know there was cash because she hadn't gotten to the bottom of my bag yet. Luckily, everything was there. I don't know if she was curious. I don't know what her intention was, but I literally said to her, "This is not right." And we both knew what she had done. I locked up my bags, and the cab was waiting for me. And so I put my stuff back away, locked it up, went back down to the cab and called the owner and had to tell them, now here I look like this crazy, American who just arrived, and now I'm accusing their housekeeper of going through my bags. They were mortified, and they went over to the house to talk with her. Apparently that wasn't their regular housekeeper. That was somebody else that they had to get in that day. So I go on my way to Robben Island, and they had to fire her, but they have to do it in a special way. So they ended up changing the locks and firing her. And then, I went to Robben Island, and I had gone to Dave Matthews, and I came back and all was well.
Wow.
The next day,
Yes.
or the next night, I can't remember specifically what I did that day, but the next night, I was sleeping. It was after 4 in the morning. I think it was about 10 after 4 in the morning. And I heard a creak right outside my door. And I had noticed this creak as I walked into that bedroom every time that the floor would creak. So I heard a creak, and I, in my groggy state, I turned to look at the door, and I saw this dark arm opening the door to my bedroom. And I honestly didn't know if I was dreaming or awake at this point. And this man came in, and I said, "What do you want?" And he said, "I'm going to rob you." And I don't know what took over me, but I really was very calm. probably because I had, just been woken up. Um, I just was whispering. He was whispering, and I was whispering. And I said, "What do you want?" And he came over to the bed. I had my pocketbook on the night table right next to the bed. And so he dumped it on the bed and started grabbing everything. And for some reason, I said, "Don't take the credit cards." I don't know why. I said, "You can't use them." And so he just took the cash. He started looking around the room. He said, "Where's your phone?" And I knew where my phone was, but I just didn't want, I just wanted to say my phone. I wanted to slow him down for some reason. And he came around the bed and he saw that it was next to me. And so he grabbed the phone and then he looked at me, and I had two necklaces on that were given to me. And he ripped them off my neck. And then he said, "I want sex." And I said, "No, no, 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 no." I said, and somehow I said, "You're not a bad man. I know you're not a bad man. You don't want to do this. I know you're poor. I know you need to take these things. Just take them and go." And he backed up from me and he kind of repeated, "I'm not a bad man. I'm not a bad man." And he said, I need a bag." And my backpack was on the floor. So he took my backpack. He opened up all the closets and he ripped, he took everything he could and packed that backpack. And then he said, "I'm going to go. Don't move, but I'm going to go." And he left. Um, I didn't move for about 5 minutes until I didn't, hear anything for a while. And then I went out into the main part of the house and I looked at the door and it was closed. And I didn't know how he would have gotten in. But he did there was a key in the door. So he took that. And then I went into the kitchen and I noticed that the window was open, but I hadn't left the window open. So I just went and closed the window. But then I realized there was a thin little window up on top that was cranked open, and that window was open. I don't even think I knew how to close that window. He must have used something to cut, put something down that window to open up the bigger window for him to come through. So here I am wrapped in a sheet, and I don't know what to do. I don't have a phone. He took my computer. He took everything. And that apartment shared a balcony with the apartment next door. So I went out that bedroom door onto the balcony and went to the apartment next door and just started banging on that door and just saying, "Help, help, I need help." The couple there quickly opened their door and took me in, and I told them what had happened, and they offered me, a drink, and they called the owners of the apartment. I didn't have their phone number nor a phone to be able to do that, but they knew them. And then they called the police. So that was quite an experience, and it just kind of went from there. I watched, how I was reacting to this. I realized that when this man was in the room with me, I thought about screaming, and I didn't have a voice to be able to do that. It's almost like a bad dream. You ever have those dreams where you want to say something or, nothing comes out? I wouldn't have been able to scream if I wanted to. But somehow I remained calm. He did tell me at one point that he was going to kill me. I didn't see that he had anything to kill me with, but I wasn't going to challenge him. He seemed young, and, in hindsight, you and I have had this conversation. I really think that the housekeeper from the day before set him up. She knew what I had. She knew how to get in, how to leave that little window open, and she had gotten fired. So this was retribution, and, and they are extremely poor there. And it's not uncommon for people to be molested and robbed. And unfortunately, it's not uncommon there.
So I sit back and I wonder you how you were resourceful, how you even knew what to say or how to be, or
I mean, honestly, I will give credit to Law and Order because I'm being serious. It's crazy to say, but I had seen an episode where this woman was about to get raped, and she said that I don't know how it popped into my head, but she said to him, "You're not a bad man. You don't want to do this. You're not a bad man." Somehow I drew that up and used it, and it worked.
Yeah,
It worked.
yeah. I heard once somebody said at a time like that to say something like, "You wouldn't. I'm like your mother. You wouldn't do this to your mother, would you? Or you wouldn't want somebody to do this to your mother, would you?" I
Right.
mean, there are those kinds of things that appeal
That you
to
connect
the heart.
person. That's right.
Yes, that goes
Yep.
beyond whatever is happening.
He was uh it's weird to say this, but he was a nice looking boy. He was probably 23 or so, and he was dressed in clean clothes. Um, he wasn't scary in his own way. He wasn't scary. His presence and not knowing what he was capable of doing was scary.
So, what did this experience show you, teach you? I mean, you had two
Uh,
crazy experiences within a short period of time of just getting there, and you
right.
didn't run. You didn't run home.
No. Oh, there was no way I was coming home. It showed me I've always known I'm strong and I'm brave. Um, and it just confirmed that when I wasn't going to go home. He was not going to steal from me the experience that I planned and wanted, and that was ahead of me. He could steal my things, but he couldn't steal the whole reason for this, uh, life-changing traveling that I was about to do. So I was adamant about not letting him do that. And I went through a bunch of different emotions. When the police came and they sat me down and said, "What did he steal?" And I thought, who cares? I'm okay. I'm alive. I'm fine. Who cares? Like, I found it trivial to try to start listing all the different things that he stole. But let me tell you, by that night, when I didn't have my phone and I didn't have a computer and I didn't have my things and I didn't have my medication and I didn't have my camera and all the things that I had just spent 6 months meticulously planning for and purchasing and being so careful, making all those decisions on what to bring with me. And he now took that all from me, and I now had to start over in a strange place and go gather these things instead of being out there and climbing Table Mountain and, visiting sites that I had planned to see. Then I got angry about that part, and then it didn't feel so trivial later on.
So I have just a short question, but before, not a short question. I don't know why I said that. You're taking my breath away. So hold on. I want to just ask everybody out there, just remind you, not ask, remind you, if you want to call in, you're welcome to 919-518-9773, or computers, that's plural, 2-gay voice on Skype. And you can be in our chat as well. Ask questions, comment, whatever you like. So just quickly, how did you gather up the stuff that you needed again? Like even your medicine?
Well, Nikki and Brian, who owned the apartment, were so fabulous. Immediately, they took me to get Nikki. Nikki gave me an older phone of hers, and so then we got a SIM card for it. And Brian went back to his office and found a laptop to give to me, and so they supplied me with that. They wanted to move in with me. That it was a 2-bedroom Airbnb place, and I said, no, I don't really want to stay here anymore. Obviously, I wasn't comfortable staying in that apartment. So Nikki drove me around to different hotels to find where I might be the most comfortable. She wasn't going to leave me anywhere until I was 100% comfortable. They also took me there's a mall there, and so I bought some clothing and some things that I needed. The medication part was really a big deal because I had to purchase a year's worth. I was planning to be away for a year. And in all these different countries, they don't always have the medication that you're on. You can't, it's not easy to get it. So I had purchased a year's worth of medication and it was very expensive. And he took it. And I really didn't know what I was going to do. I went, this was just the next day. I walked into a pharmacy, just a regular pharmacy there in Cape Town. And it was almost closing time. And there was a person in front of me talking to the pharmacist. And I waited patiently for them to finish up. And then it came to me and he said, "Can I help you?" And I just started to cry because I didn't know what part of my story to start with to tell him how badly I needed this medication and how can he help me? Is there any way he can help me get this? He was so fabulous. He took me by the hands and he said, "Don't you worry. We have exactly what you need and I'm going to give it to you, cost however many months you need. You don't have to think about a thing. You don't need a prescription. You don't need to, because I said, here's my doctor, here's, this." He said, "I believe you and I'm going to take care of this." And he did. And I have never, ever forgotten that kind of kindness because it's scary to be, in a foreign country and not have the things that you need, especially medications that you need.
And
So
people can be genuinely lovely.
people are very, very good on the whole out there.
There's more
Yeah.
good than not, right?
There's definitely more good than not. I had strangers helping me because I was shook up. So I came away with a lot of lessons to be learned. I'm usually very, very trusting and open and honest. And I found maybe that's not so smart when you're in a cab to tell the cab driver, "Oh, I'm just here traveling. I don't know where I am. I don't know where I'm going." Maybe not let him know that, I think you've got to pick and choose who you can.
I think that's a very good point
Mhm.
because I think, I know that
Mhm.
there is a difference between being fearful and cautious.
Right.
Cautious is perfectly great.
Right.
Fear, if it's debilitating, maybe not so great.
Right.
There is a difference. It can be subtle, but and I use this analogy when you're crossing the street, and there's a lot of traffic, you don't have to be fearful and scared. You just be cautious. You look left,
Right.
you look right, and when it's time to go, you go.
Right.
But you don't not go.
Right. You don't not go.
You don't
That's
not
the
go.
point. Right.
So, and I know you've learned a lot of lessons. So after that experience, what other great experiences or not so great experiences did you have?
Really, everything was a great experience
Okay.
after that. My next location was to go on these different safaris. And that was probably exactly what I needed. You go into the bush and you don't have access to your cell phone, to cell towers. So you're really cut off. But for some reason, there is such a calmness and a peacefulness in there. You don't know where you are, you're nowhere, and you're out in the wild with all these crazy wild animals, yet it's very peaceful. And I had 10 days of that. I did 4 different camps, 3 in Botswana and 1 in Zambia. And I just absolutely loved the peacefulness there and connecting with the guides who are like encyclopedias there. Oh, let me back up a little bit. I also, after that, on this trip, I wanted to do some charitable work and give back. And I chose 2 different children's charities. And one of them was Ubuntu. And it was children who have AIDS. And they live in a terrible slum in outside of Cape Town. These kids have nothing, yet they are the happiest children you've ever seen. And I went and let their love, they all just loved me up, and their smiles and their songs and their voices I mean, they would play with a piece of dust on the floor and be happy and just run around the leg of the table and, chase each other. They were exactly what I needed. Um,
I have a colleague. Her name is Lucetta Zaytoon. I think the two of you should have a conversation because she wrote a book about running away. That it's okay to run away, and she went to Africa. She had some similar experiences,
okay.
and I would love for the two of you to connect. I'm going to have to connect the two of you. So,
Have to do
so
that.
I know you plan to go for a year,
Yes.
and you stayed for 9 months. Is that right?
8 months.
Eight
Yeah.
months. What
8 months.
made you leave?
Um, I felt that I was doing a lot of spending money and a lot of eating and a lot of shopping. And I needed to get back to my life, to living and working, and finding, you know, what I was going to do because it was fabulous to travel. But that wasn't my real world. I don't have the means to do that, forever. So I just found that I was in Italy and I was supposed to be there for 3 months in Florence, and different people were going to come visit at different times. And that didn't end up happening in a lot of cases. People say they're going to come, but, for one reason or another, they can't, which was fine. But I felt, well, what am I going to do here for the next 6 months? I had tried to work. I had tried to get some work in Italy, or I would have loved to have lived in Italy. But as an American, it's very hard to get work there. So they don't look kindly on Americans taking away jobs from Italians. So I really knew it was time to go. And the last part of my journey was to kind of get fit, something I had always wanted to do. So I went up to Whistler into the mountains for 6 weeks, and I did this nutrition and hiking kind of camp. And then I came back down the coast and figured out where I was going to live and settle and get to work. And that was the end of my trip.
So you knew it. So that's wonderful because so you had this thing made up looking a certain way. And
Hmm.
we have, in some ways, sometimes we have our life looking a certain way, or people plan this and they plan that, or, we want to do this, we want to do that, and then life takes a turn. So
Right.
you had it looking a year, but you were okay when the mood struck you or
Hmm.
the whatever came up and said, okay, it's time.
Right.
I've reached my thing, whatever that was, and I'm okay going
Hmm.
back now.
Yeah.
And you just
Yeah.
did it.
I did it. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
So what did you bring back emotionally?
Uh, my goodness. Um, such such a love for people all over the world. Just learning that you can communicate. We all know this and we've all heard it and we've all said it, but I experienced it. So there's a difference.
Mhm.
When you can't speak a language, if I was in Indonesia or anywhere, you don't have to speak the same language, but there are commonalities. When I was in Bali, I got very sick and I couldn't communicate with the person that was where I was. And she understood. We somehow communicated, and she took such good care of me. Um, I, I can't explain it. There's just um, a way to communicate. People are good, people are loving, people are trusting. And I just loved experiencing that throughout the entire world that I traveled. Um, People are usually happy. And I understand it's not like because you're in your day-to-day, work environment, so people can be happy when they're out traveling. But these are people that are in their regular. I lived like a local. Wherever I went, I never stayed in a hotel, or a resort or anything like that. I might have visited a resort for a day just to, kind of have fun for the day for myself. But I wanted to live like a local. I wanted to get to know the shopkeepers and where do you go every day? In Italy, I lived in Florence, like I said, and the people that became my friends were those shopkeepers, and they were so lovely. and one of them owned a little food shop, and they were three cousins, and they didn't speak a word of English, and I didn't speak a word of Italian, but I ended up taking 3 weeks of intensive Italian, and I would come into the shop and I would practice on them, and they would laugh at me, but hug me at the same time. And we became such friends that when I decided to pack up and leave Florence early, like I had said, I had an orchid that I had bought, and I walked down to their storefront. I walked it down and I handed it to them, and I said in Italian, which I can't do right now, would you keep this? Would you keep this for me? And they said, we'll keep it until you return.
Oh.
And I was just this beautiful, friendship. But we didn't speak the same language, but we did, in a sense, you know.
Language of the heart, honey.
It really,
Yes.
it really is.
There really
Yeah.
is a language of the heart. There's no
Yeah.
question how when we connect and listen to each other, and
Right.
there's nobody we can't talk to.
There's nobody.
Nobody.
I mean, I came back with knowing much more about myself, really more confirmation about what I wanted, and that I don't need to stop short of that. And I knew I wanted to live a beautiful life. I'm an interior designer. So,
Okay, so plug. Take
Okay.
a little plug right now. So website, that kind of stuff. Perfect time.
Okay. So I've done residential, hospitality, commercial, restaurants. My website is merylsterninteriors.com. And I also have a merylandgracie.com website, because I do have a partner out in San Francisco who's an architect. So we have a website together too. And I'm back here in Jersey, but I design. I go to Florida. I have a client down in Florida right now. I go anywhere.
Okay, so you go anywhere in the world.
Anywhere in the world.
And do you have a certain style?
My style is modern, sophisticated, classic. That's how I would describe it. I love to do, for me, I love to do different things. I would get bored of doing the same thing, but I would say I'm a modernist, but not to the point of, there being nothing around. I like a little whimsy. I like a little, pops of color here and there. But yet I can do a lot of color and do it in a quiet way too. Depends on the project, really. It depends what the project calls for.
Right.
So
and the people.
And the people, because I'm designing for them.
Exactly.
So
now, all these years later, and what's it? Would you say 5? It's 5 years later.
5 years.
5.
Yeah.
So how have you evolved, grown, stayed the same? Do you need do you need a reminder? Where are you now?
So I think, I've definitely grown a lot. I decided when I had packed up and left that I knew that I was bored and stale doing residential design. So through traveling, I decided that I wanted to get into hospitality design and, just broaden my knowledge and use the skills that I already had, but in different ways. I didn't know, I had done a restaurant prior, and I had done an office, a little bit of commercial work, but I decided I strictly wanted to do hospitality design. So when I got to, actually it was Santa Barbara where I started, I joined a firm who did country clubs and residential. So I started with that. And then I decided to move up to San Francisco and joined a firm who does hotels and restaurants and senior living and lots of very interesting spaces that all need this design work. And what I found is that I really loved, more than doing residential design, doing these types of projects, because they have an end and they have an urge to get finished.
Yeah. Yes.
So for me, I like to complete a project. And that was part of what was dragging me down about my residential design, because it is a luxury for a lot of people, and they don't have to have their homes done. They don't have to finish something that they start. It's all up to them and their timeline, which is, as it should be. But as a designer, you don't always get to finish a project. And there is something to be said about momentum. And when you've shopped for it and you've put an entire design together, that makes sense. You can't always get those things later on down the road. They're not available. So if you don't get it all done right then and there, it kind of falls apart. And that bothers me.
So, okay, and now you're back doing residential
No,
or anything.
I am doing some. I'll always do some residential.
Okay.
But I'm doing restaurants.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm back and I'm doing restaurants, and I'm doing also some other commercial work. So it's tough because people don't know me in that field here. They know me as a residential designer. But it'll come. It'll
Got it.
come. Yeah.
So what is now on your list? Now you've done something huge. I mean, it's incredible when you do something huge.
Yeah.
Then does the next things have to be huger, or do they
No.
get smaller? Or
They get
what?
smaller.
They get
I think they
smaller.
get smaller. I've learned to downsize, and your definition of what you find beautiful changes too, and what you thought living a beautiful life meant changes. So for me, I guess living a beautiful life means that my kids are okay and healthy and happy. So I'm with them and I work with them on that number one. Professionally, I'm definitely building my business. And that's important to me. So
Do you
that's where-
notice a content, like a feeling of being content? Getting some big thing, kind of like accomplishing some big thing. Do you feel content, or maybe you'd find another word?
I don't know. Yeah, I don't know if I feel
Okay.
content. No.
Okay. So you
I
want, so go ahead.
Yeah, no, I'm always, looking to learn and looking for what's different and new. So that if it's different, then I have to learn about it. I don't want to be content. I think that's what made me bored.
Mm.
I want to be, I can sit, believe me, for an entire weekend and, watch, Mad Men, binge watch a show. So talk about content. I'm very content to do that.
Yeah. Yeah.
But in the bigger scheme of things, I still want a lot more. I want to reach, I loved this firm I worked for in San Francisco. And I had to come back, partly because of my father. He's not doing so well. And I wanted to be, I needed to be on the East Coast. So, but that was an excellent, fabulous firm that I worked for. And I loved the projects that they did. I would love to build a firm that does the same thing, get into some of the big hotels and,
And so you shall.
and so I shall.
And so you shall. And,
Right.
we can take these chances, and I'm sitting here listening, and and Amnon has my books, right? So and I'm authoring. I'm a coach, business coach, and authoring a series of books. And I would say that pushing the button to publish my first book was extremely difficult. There was moments where I didn't even want to do it, even though I'd done the work. And you can find my books on Amazon. In Just One Afternoon, Listening to the Hearts of Men, and In Just One Afternoon, Listening to the Hearts of Twins. Next is In Just One Afternoon, Listening to the Hearts of Millennials. And at the same time, I'm working on.
I love it.
Yeah, and the next one is addiction, and people who are recovering, have recovered from addiction, and family members.
It's so relevant.
Huh?
It's so relevant.
Yes, and if anyone has any stories about those, please let me know. The thing is, with our lives, things present themselves, and moments, timing, getting in touch with where you are, who you are, and taking opportunities, and not, waiting to cross every T and dot every I. And I don't know what this trip cost you. But, going through my mind, one of the things I was thinking about is, "Well, how do you do a trip like this? It's got to cost $1 million." And sometimes it doesn't. And,
Right.
you get creative with things. And, if all you have to spend is X amount of dollars, you figure it out.
Right. It did
Right.
cost me a lot more than I thought it would, which is also one of the reasons I cut it short. I said, I can't continue to spend, eat, and shop. Um, but there was a comfort level that I needed to have for me, in these Airbnbs that was comfortable for me. I didn't need a hotel level.
Well, and you got to do it for 8 months.
Right. It's a long time.
It's a long time. If
Yeah.
you're sitting here listening to this show and you say, "You know what? I'll take 2 months and travel by myself. I'll take a
Do it.
month."
Do it.
Do it,
Doesn't
right?
matter.
Doesn't matter.
Doesn't
Do
matter. A
do
week.
it. A week,
Do a
exactly.
week.
Have an adventure.
Yeah.
I did one in California once years ago. I had to go on business, and I said, "You know what? I'm gonna take a week before this business trip and travel around parts of California and do certain things that I was scared of, or I knew I couldn't do well, or I didn't think I could do well." And one of those was, I'm petrified of heights, so I made myself go to.
Me too.
You are too?
Mm-hmm.
Oh wow, we have to
Mm-hmm.
talk about that. One of the
I used to be afraid of
huh?
flying.
We'll say
I
that
used to be
again.
afraid of flying.
Yes, and I made myself go to this place where it was a lookout, and I drove my car up to a certain point, and then I about passed out. I couldn't drive the car up the mountain the rest of the way. I was so scared. But
Mm-hmm.
I breathed, I
Right.
prayed, I
Right.
shook, and I just slowly, I mean, God knows if anybody was behind me, I feel sorry for him because I must have gone at a snail's pace. And I did it. And
Right. You
then,
did.
huh?
And then what happened?
I got up. I took a while to get out of the car, and I went like this, like a mummy. Got out of the car, walked as close as I could, breathed, and said, "Yes!" you know?
Right.
And back
You did
then, we
it.
did not have, not everybody didn't have a cell phone.
Okay.
And so or GPS. I think I might have
Oh.
had a flip, but no GPS.
Mm-hmm.
And I was terrible at listening to directions. When somebody
Okay.
gave me directions, I would, you get out of the car, you go to the gas station, you ask for directions. I was
Yeah.
terrible at getting directions. And so I purposefully did it several times, got out of the car, went to the gas station, "Okay, how do I get here? Okay, take a left, take a right." I had to really listen or, to where I was going. And I made myself do it. And when I reflect back, I know there are things that I needed to do for myself, as small as it may sound or as big, I did
Mm-hmm.
it.
Right.
So we all have that in us. So we only have a few minutes left. And
Oh,
I
okay.
want to ask you in closing, and I'm going to ask you to come back because there's some things we didn't get to talk about. But in closing, what would you say to the world? That's a big question,
That is a
and it's a big world.
I mean, I would say to the world the same things I would say to my kids. Put that fear aside and go for it. You would regret not doing something more than you would regret doing it. I don't think you're going to look back and say, "I'm so pissed that I did that world travel."
Yeah, really.
But really, you might say, "I'm really disappointed in myself that I didn't do it when I had the chance." So when you have an opportunity to do something, and the timing for me, just that all came together. My kids were out. I knew I needed a change from work. My dog had just died, so I didn't have my dog anymore to take care of. I did it, and I would recommend that to anyone. It's the greatest thing I ever did for myself. It was really a gift that I could give to myself.
Absolutely. And we should give gifts to ourselves. And it is not selfish.
And happy Hanukkah to us.
Happy Hanukkah. And it is not selfish. So
Right.
I suggest everyone listening today, give yourself a gift, even a small one today. Just give yourself a gift and go, yes. And
That's
with
right.
that, we are at the end of our time. And I want to thank my beautiful cousin for coming here today.
Thank you for having me, Meryl.
My
Love
pleasure.
to hear from you.
I love you, and I'm going to ask you to come back.
You got it. Happy to come back.
And to all of you out there, have a wonderful, wonderful day. You're very special to us, and we're glad you're here. And thank you, Amnon. Huh? And happy Hanukkah. And with that, Merry Christmas and happy everything. And mwah! See ya.
Bye-bye.
You are tuned to the Nissan Communications Network. If you tuned in too late, you can always watch each program in its entirety or download an MP3 audio file of it in the archives section at nissancommunications.com. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel, follow us on Twitter, and like us on Facebook. Sponsored by Telestream's Wirecast software, StreamingGear.com, Carolina Apparel, and DeltaForce.net.